Why, hello there. Thank you for joining us. This is Edgar Wright, and I am joined here by Master Bill Pope, the director of photography.
Hello.
Bill, is it true you've never done a commentary before?
It is very true, yes.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited for everybody sitting at home. I hope this isn't the first time you've watched the film, because that would be... Sometimes, I don't know if you've ever seen like the commentary for Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger's commentary, but he likes to tell you exactly what's happening on screen as if you haven't seen it before. I promise we won't do that. This is a shot of a house. Now tell us, what day of the shoot was this?
We had the incredible idea to start with the first scene on the first day. We stayed pretty much in continuity. We shot many of the scenes in continuity.
Yeah, we pretty much... I remembered when I did the TV show Spaced that shooting in order for all the apartment stuff was really helpful for the actors. And so with Still's apartment, we shot everything in sequence. So in the first, 2 weeks of the film, we'd shot kind of like the backbone of the whole film. So even though we had 5 months to come of like fight scenes... It was good. It's good
to start here too, because remember the eye lines were so incredibly difficult. We actually laid this scene out and shot it on video a couple of days before, just to check out our eye lines, because 4 people around a table is really hard.
Yeah, the dinner party scene is any scene around a dinner table is always a real bitch to shoot, just because of the number of eye lines and coverage that you need, especially if all 4 people are all talking to each other. So it's kind of usually like in a schedule, like any scene that involves some kind of dinner around a dinner table is always a lot more difficult than you would believe. And this is on a set. And
that exterior was even on a set. The exterior was translates in when she's standing outside and the snow falling behind her.
Yeah. But taken with real photographs of the... You saw a shot of Knives standing outside the house, which is...
that's true. That was a real exterior.
But then the translights, which are essentially the backdrops that are behind the set, are taken from photographs of the actual location.
That's not the actual title of this.
So let's explain this shot coming up in a second. Technocrane wizardry.
Well, Marcus built this whole apartment based on this shot coming up right here, with a movable wall that we could take out of the way, elongate the room, pull back on this Technocrane, slide the couch underneath us on rails, and boom down.
And actually, there was no ceiling there. That ceiling is completely digital. But what's funny is that we had like an extremely long carpet. So Marcus Rowland's our production designer. So I guess the set was like a big L, and it was only a big L to accommodate the Technocrane and that big carpet for that one shot.
One shot, which we did on our first day or second day?
I think it was the second day of the shoot, you're right. We planned it. It's always interesting how like sort of like really complicated shots come right at the start of the shoot, and there's a lot of build up to doing that shot that's like right at the top, and then once it's done you remember that you have to do the rest of the film as well.
It's also a good just breaking everybody in. You feel like you really accomplished something because you planned for that shot for a long time and really worked it out and figured it out, and timing and rehearsal. And
oh yeah, and we timed it to the music, and we had and on top of that, like Mark Webber was learning to play guitar, so Nigel Godrich was really tough on him, so it was like sort of like it was an extremely complicated shot, but it's the opening title shot, so it's got to be good. But I like the idea of building a specific set just for one shot. Now, me and Bill, let's talk a little bit how we met before we get into the sort of film proper and stuff. I first came to talk to you about this like way before we actually started filming, like 2 years before, maybe 2008.
We met on the set of Spider-Man. You came
to
visit
right.
Sam.
That's right. I wasn't glossing over that bit. I came to visit Sam Raimi on the set of Spider-Man 3, and that's when I first met Bill. And the first thing that you said to me was, you said, "Oh, you directed Spaced," and I said, "That's right." And he goes, and you said, "Oh, the Matrix crew were big fans of Spaced and the Spaced Matrix episode," which made me very happy.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah, no, and then we got talking about this probably about 2 years ago, 2 years before we'd actually started filming, and I remember if I can say nice things about you to your face. But I remember being very impressed by the fact that you'd really done your homework. You'd read the 2 books that were out, and you hadn't read the script yet. But I remember the thing that you said was, I remember the thing that you said to me after reading the books was, you said, "Don't forget the girls in this film. That the females are the key to this, to the books, and should be the key to the film, and they are the heart of it." And I said, "Absolutely."
Do you
remember saying that?
I know exactly what it is, because I can always tell when an action movie gets boring when I'm watching it in the theater. When half of the audience, I start losing half the audience. It's like we did too many boy things. When you start losing characterization and the narration and clever dialogue, you've lost the female half of the room. And it's just you need to hang on to both sides. Boys can just get involved with blowing crap up. It's like.
I hope that maybe if there's a danger that the needle goes into the Boise area in this film, I would like to think that those Boise sequences involve the girls fighting.
Oh.
So maybe one of the most intense action sequences is at least the 2 girls fighting. So you would hope that you haven't lost the girls by the fact it's a cat fight.
I don't think girls dislike fighting. I think they just have a shorter attention span when it comes to fighting.
Is that specifically for boys fighting?
I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to put out the audience cards.
Maybe we should have like a little Nielsen box for people at home that they can kind of say more boys, more girls. And he said more goys. That came out completely wrong there. I was getting all mixed up. I've just been taking lozenges. I have a cold. I apologize. So this is here's an interesting thing, is that a lot of these locations are based on photographic reference that Brian Lee O'Malley took before he started drawing the books. And then when we went to the real locations, we ended up simplifying them to make them look more like the comics.
Like his drawings.
And part of that was like, the art department, and part of it was digital. Like we'd make trees a lot simpler. So they're real trees, but they have been digitally painted to look more like the comic than they do in reality.
Simplified them graphically. Brian draws from photographs and simplifies the world in a graphic manner, and we tried to do the same thing in our post by cleaning up trees, by simplifying houses, by simplifying the lines of things, laying in perfect snow, and things that just don't happen in real life. It's kind of the way you remember things, but they aren't really that way.
Yeah, because you notice, it's almost like we would be on set and we'd look at kind of locations, or when we were location scouting, and saying, if Brian didn't have time or the patience to draw it, it didn't deserve to be in the film. So even like this store that just went past, the Goodwill store, or even this Sonic Boom, we made things a lot more symmetrical, and we really simplified things and tried to take away the clutter to make straighter lines. And in fact, this record store, we even changed the signage back to how it used to be, because it had changed since Brian had taken photos for reference. And we just tried to make all of, I don't know if you can see, but all of the perspective lines are really clean and simple.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a lot of work, an enormous amount. Every single one of these album covers on the wall has been cleared, which is an enormous amount of work. So I have to say thank you to Karen and Woody, part of our amazing clearance team.
Yeah, Brian's laziness caused us a lot of work.
Now, this was shot in the middle of summer, I guess. When did we shoot this? Like May or June? June, maybe.
Probably. There was a real squirrel going across the telephone wire, by the way, in the background.
I know it looks like it would be a CG squirrel, but we weren't that wasteful to spend squillions of dollars.
I want credit for that real squirrel.
Toronto have black squirrels, which to me, as a Brit who only knows red and grey, I always found the black ones were the evil ones. They're like the satanic squirrels. They always look faintly sinister to me. They look like the plague carriers, the black squirrels. I guess they are.
We should tell Cronenberg that's his next picture.
So here we go into our first fantasy sequence, I guess, beyond the ding-dongs and the visualized music. But this is the Dream Desert. This appears in the first book, and this was against blue screen, but we did have a real floor, didn't we? We had a real desert floor.
We did have a real desert floor. Whether or not they used it, I don't know, but it definitely wasn't underneath her skates.
Yeah, there was a path for her skates, because rollerblading on the desert, I would say, is impossible. I would say rollerblading is pretty impossible for most people anyway.
Not for Ramona.
So, as an example of talking about simplicity, much like the comics, Wallace's apartment is incredibly bare, deliberately, to make it really sort of clean and simple. And I guess in a lot of, especially in a lot of youth-oriented films, you get a lot of bright colours and a lot of clutter and a lot of posters, and we wanted to, like the book, strip it right back. And also the idea with the colour palette in this first kind of part of the film is that there is colours, but they're pretty muted until Ramona's hair comes into it, and that her hair is supposed to be the first bright colour in the film. You're just watching it now, Bill, aren't you?
No. That's true. I was watching Michael's stunned look. He's so good in the scene. Die.
Who are you getting hypnotized? You were getting hypnotized by Sarah's eyes. There's a lot of big eyes in this film. People have pointed that out, that this film is full of some of the biggest-eyed actors. I definitely tried to cast people with really expressive eyes. Not that was the deal breaker for them being cast.
Definitely Mary's eyes are huge.
Well, Johnny and Michael's eyes are huge.
That's true.
Yeah.
This was the scene we had to shoot twice because of the rain.
Do you remember the other thing about that location that was particularly difficult?
Oh, the smelly alleyway, the dead cat or whatever it was.
But it wasn't it the guy had sort of compost?
Was that what it was?
Yeah, I think it was
I didn't know what it was. It was just smelled like something. He was keeping dead bodies. I kept imagining he was going to come out in a clown suit.
Oh my God. I thought it was like his garden was full of elephant dung or something. It really reeked. So it was, we had to go back and shoot that scene twice in the street because it was absolutely pouring down with rain.
We got rained out.
And also, the other thing, when we shot that scene in the street, it was August, was it? I think it was right at the end when we shot it.
Right.
And we had to put fake snow down, and it was right in the middle of summer in Toronto on Queen West, which is like a street with loads of bars. So we're shooting at 1 in the morning, and people are coming out of bars, and there's fake snow everywhere. So
we stunned a few people.
And not just that, but drunks on the street would start having snowball fights. And occasionally throwing snowballs at us as well, but there was a lot of snowball fights in July. Because it would be real, what is it, the crushed ice?
It's real crushed ice. It looks just like snow and acts just like snow. Basically manufactured snow. Just like on a...
Now, can we talk about that light switch on the top left?
That's real. That light switch was there. It's one of the things that inspired us to take this shot.
I know, it's really...
We have to include that light switch. This was in a fraternity house for the University of Toronto, I guess.
Yeah.
And that light switch was on the top in this fraternity house, and no one could tell us why the light switch was up there, but we included it.
We had to relocate all these frat boys who were in the middle of their exams. And I thought it would be quite funny if they watched the film back and saw that suddenly there was a load of girls in the frat house when they were gone.
I'll leave you alone forever now.
This was second only to the alley in terms of smell, by the way.
It smelled of beer. It really... So those...
Beer and man sweat was just about as reeking as the alley, I guess.
The fraternity should be proud of themselves. Their house absolutely stank of beer. I think I'm not sure that anybody touched a beer at any point during the shooting of this, because it was basically you were sweating beer by the end of the night. It was pretty... We shot this... this is the thing, is that this is a pretty complicated scene to do on location, just in terms of the amount of... Obviously, there's 3 different montages within the scene. So I remember we went back to this location and we had to... I think we were here for 3 days, but we filmed every single inch of this place.
Up and down it. Pulling Michael around on a dolly to do his fake walk, dimming the lights down at particular points, bringing them back up at particular points, having to have everything on a dimmer, doing those push-ins on the different actors over Michael's shoulder, and he had to be a composite, and we had to gauge what each cut would be, where they would be in millimeters so that they'd all cut together. It was incredibly, like all of Edgar's scenes, and complicated. It looks easy, but don't try this at home.
I think the most complicated shot people don't even realize is an effect because it's kind of too seamless is when you talk to all the partygoers, there's 5 partygoers in a row, and if you watch Michael, he stays in exactly the same place. And it was kind of partly inspired by, you see a lot of montages where, in, I don't know, John Hughes films or Beyond the Valley of the Dolls or things like that, where you see party scenes where it cuts through a lot of different partygoers talking. But I was thinking, well, what if it was the same over the shoulder of Michael? Michael was always there and never changed, and we tracked in. So that's actually a lot more complicated than it looks. But if you look back at that, you can actually see that Michael doesn't change position at all between the different partygoers. Being vox popped. We're back in Wallace's now. See, I'm turning into Schwarzenegger. I'm just telling you what's happening on screen. Oh my God! I went for the.
Let's hear your Austrian accent.
Yeah, I call it the Schwarzenegger button. If in doubt, tell them what's happening. Well, here's a shot of Anna Kendrick and Michael Cera. It's a split screen. Now this was tricky for Anna Kendrick because by the time it came to shoot her bits, all of the other pieces had already been done, so she had to fit in to what Michael Cera was doing.
She did it to a recording, right?
Yeah, she did. But I guess it's kind of weird, like doing the bulk of your part to a recording, because Michael had already shot his parts, Occasionally you do those things live. Sometimes you can do those phone calls live, but because it was in 2 separate locations, it was impossible.
Dude, now I'm reading it. So happy for you.
The other thing I'd like to say about this scene, which is indicative of Edgar, is you remember Kieran was lying in the bed at night, and then it was instantly day. That wasn't done through special effects. That was done by a cut. Kieran had to lie there while we changed the light and made it day.
And how long did the change ever take? Like 30 seconds?
We built it in, but nonetheless, it's not done through any trickery. It's just done by an edit.
Yeah, I like doing those things. There's a similar one in, I've done it, it's my 3rd time I've done it now, because there's one in Space.
Is that right?
And there's one in Shaun of the Dead.
Insta-day?
Insta-day. I like that kind of stuff. We had this idea, one thing we'll talk about here, which is obviously loads
Again, that outside is a photograph out there. That's not a real outside.
Yeah.
How could I possibly forget?
One of the things that when I was designing this film, and kind of in tribute to the comics, but also a way of making it feel like a comic book film in a different way, was to try and make every single cut a different shot, and that we don't completely stick to that because obviously sometimes you get into normal coverage, but certainly the idea was that if you were drawing a comic, you wouldn't draw the same frame twice necessarily. So to kind of keep the momentum of the film going is to always be cutting to a different shot. So what the end effect that I wanted was if people were really fast readers, and sometimes people rip through comics really fast. Like some people can read one of Brian's books in like 40 minutes.
Right.
Quite easily, and I thought, well, maybe the way to do this film is that if you're making the film, if you're a fast reader, and then, you can go back and pick apart every single frame for little details, like Lane Brand amps, and Guitar Wolf in the background on the reverse shot, on Neil's Nintendo shirt, which you see for like kind of 3 seconds. But I hopefully it creates quite an interesting feel that it's not necessarily, it's pretty subtle, the effect it has, but it definitely kind of enhances a pretty giddy feeling to kind of keep going through different setups.
It's dense. The whole movie's dense in that way.
If we win, it won't just be knives wearing sex.
This
and Ellen actually sewed that shirt.
She did.
We didn't see it until she was done.
Yeah. Laura Jean Shannon, who's our costume person, gave Ellen the job of making her own shirts. Oh, we should talk about this shot. Explain what's going on here, Bill.
Michael's walking to the bathroom. He's shutting the door.
And then behind
it, the entire crew is moving the school that you'll see into place, making an enormous amount of noise. And Michael opens the door, and he's in the schoolroom.
Now, what somebody said after about 10 takes is that he should keep walking forwards so he can go onto the new floor.
Yeah.
So it's clear that he's in a new set. But I think we did like...
That was Fraser. That was his idea. It was the visual effects guy who said, you should actually do it real and step onto the floor so people will know we didn't do it as a blue screen.
Yeah.
It's actually a big set thing. That same shot could have been done in 1945.
Yeah.
And I give Fraser credit for it.
With it, there's a lot of transitions in this film, and it's something that some of which are in the comics, and some of which that I designed as a way of like I wanted this kind of feel at the start, because obviously Ramona is appearing in Scott Pilgrim's Dreams. I wanted this feeling that it was not entirely clear. I see that Scott Pilgrim is like a daydreamer, and so I want it to be not entirely clear whether he's awake or whether he's asleep. And I even have this theory that in terms of when people ask about the level of reality in the film, I have a theory that like him walking into the school corridor is the start of a dream of which he never wakes up from. It's like the whole film is like an exaggerated cheese dream of Scott Pilgrim, or like
cheese dream.
I call it it's a cheese dream.
It's a wet dream. Scott Pilgrim's wet dream.
And where's Scott Pilgrim's? That's what it's going to be called in some foreign territories. Scott Pilgrim's wet dream.
If it doesn't work, we can re-release it with that title.
Say yes, we signed for your damn package.
So yeah, 8 o'clock.
That was a real shot. You'll see that on the making of. Michael Cera threw that package behind him, and I think on throw 28, he didn't look. He's throwing it behind without looking, and he hit it square in the waste paper basket.
He was so close every time.
Now here we're shooting on a real location, but there's a lot of picturesque work been done to the background, again to make it look more like the comic.
Simplifying trees, snow falling.
Making the snow look really level. Because snow, like, doesn't... like, if you look at Brian's... When I saw Brian's book, it made me think of the first kind of inlay, the sort of inside cover, made me think of the cover for Weezer's Pinkerton album.
Oh, yeah.
And I just like that style of drawing snow, that snow is completely level, and you maybe had one set of footprints going through, but there was nothing else. The reality of snow is that it's if it's been trampled on, it's got lots of dapples. Now that's on a location, but we actually 2 seconds ago we were on the set. Yeah, we shot the swing stuff on the set.
The swing set on the close-ups.
Yeah,
were on a set.
Yeah, because we reshot some of the dialogue on the set, and then this is actually on location. This is in a park at like 4 in the morning. Not that you can tell, which is kind of what's nice about it. But it feels real.
It was in the spring too, because we had the terrible problem of the bird noises.
Yeah,
the birds were mating, and they were driving us crazy.
Yeah, there was a lot. We thought we were going to have to. In fact, one part of the thing that we reshot was because there was a lot of bird noise. Basically, around kind of 3 o'clock in the morning, if you're trying to record sound, you're kind of screwed, basically.
So we had to go on stage and pick up the sitting down the chairs.
How much tea do you want?
And to scare off the birds, they have a big plastic owl, which sat on my monitor, which I'm not sure whether the owl did any good. But then later, when we reshot some things later at night, they actually had a kestrel.
They had all sorts of raptor birds. They had hawks and all sorts of things that they'd carry around. The birds were really quiet then. The birds would not make a peep.
Basically, if you have noisy neighbours, I recommend becoming a Faulkner. So this is another set, which is Ramona's apartment, which again is based on drawings of Brian's. Like the layout of this set, Marcus Rowland has designed it pretty much to the comics. Like if you look at the comics, and it's very similar. But I like the simplicity of it again. It feels real, but it's not kind of like cluttered, like the reality would be. A lot of these things, like this shot here of them kissing, and this is what Bill was brilliant at doing this stuff and really up for it, was that we wanted to do as many, even though there are effects in that shot with like the hearts and obviously the dream guitarist, the central part of it is that it's in camera. There's an in-camera lighting effect. It's not, we didn't do that in post to make them silhouette-y. We did that on the day, in time with the music. So there was a lot of,
There's a lot of theatrical stuff going on.
Yeah. a lot of which is nice because I think it helps the actors.
I think all the light dimming and all that stuff was done in camera. And
Yeah.
Tried to do it to cues and just add some post flavor. Michael, obviously we couldn't do a miniature Michael.
But I think it's really good because I think it helps like the the camera crew. It helps the actors, especially if you're playing music in as well.
Yeah, everybody gets into it.
Yeah. And Ron, our amazing grip, was really good with the music stuff, I felt.
The famous Ron Renzetti.
Yeah. He was on it. Ron is on it. Maybe that's why he's called Ron. This is an area of Toronto called Cabbagetown,
Right.
which is very beautiful buildings, really interesting looking suburbs. And there's some, in that wide shot back there, there's a bit of digital work that's been done to make the horizon a bit cleaner and more picturesque. Same with that shot as well.
Snow extensions. We weren't allowed to snow up whole neighborhoods. It would drive people crazy. So the middle of the streets was always open for cars, and that would be filled in later.
Would it be wrong to say that it drove us crazy as well?
The sound of grinding ice eventually drove us all mad.
It's not something that you want to start your shooting day with, is for like 3 hours.
Slowly tortured.
Every film I do from now on is going to be sunny. It's going to be set in Hawaii on a beach. No, I'm not a sun person. I think I'm just going to stay in the dark. I don't know. I did like. What was interesting though is it like having lots of fake snow. It makes it cold on set, no matter what time of year it is.
Yeah. Laying out in the summer, you have to get a coat out.
Nice contra zoom there.
A well-designed sequence.
Yeah, it's nice doing. You notice actually. I mean, I've done in my previous things, and Bill has done, in fact, and I've ripped off some of Bill's shots before I met him, like lots of crash zooms and whip pans. And in fact, you did one of my favourite sequences of crash zooms in Army of Darkness with the creation of like Ash's robot hand. But we wanted to bring like crash zooms into the 21st century. So you notice that the crash zooms actually have hand-drawn lines on them. Every time there's a crash zoom, there's hand-drawn lines. I've done a lot of whip pans and crash zooms in my previous stuff, so I wanted to add a little extra to it this time. So you notice that so what was nice is hand-drawn onto every crash zoom are these speed lines, because it is like, not only is it how it is in the comic book art, but whenever I draw storyboards, I always draw speed lines on everything. So I thought it would be a funny and also entirely pointless exercise to draw speed lines onto the actual film itself. This
fits in so seamlessly. I don't even notice it anymore. It's amazing.
Yeah. This was another set. This is replicating an existing club that used to be called the Rocket, which is now
A restaurant?
No, it was a swingers club called Good Handies, Toronto's pansexual playground. And we basically recreated this club and made it slightly bigger. But this is a very complicated set. You can see that everything adjoins, like the dressing room. There's 2 balconies. It was, there's 3 different levels.
Is that why Marcus kept going to that club?
Let's call him out.
It's hard for me to keep track sometimes.
Marcus, if you're listening, you are busted.
Nice.
How
did you meet Scott?
This was a complicated sequence. I mean, they're all complicated.
The club's got incredibly complicated. As complicated as 4 people around a table can be, this was times a million.
Yeah.
Swinging all these walls, we would slide out. We had to work up on the balcony. We had to work on the floor. These people are sitting on the balcony. You had to take the dollies up there to them on platforms. Now you're off the platform. Now you're on a track. It's just we're working on that stage level, on the floor level, and up on that balcony level, and even up on the higher balcony level.
Yeah, and then, we couldn't afford to build a separate balcony set. So when we did the balcony stuff, we had to have platforms. We basically spent a day doing just the close-ups of everybody in the balcony, because it's, a 10-minute sequence? And, just to make it super complicated, beyond even the fight that's about to happen, is that there are 10 of the principal actors in the scene. Everybody has coverage. In this film particularly, in the fight scenes and the music scenes, the reaction shots are so important, and you need to get everybody's reaction shots because it's it's like a musical, and like having the reaction shots is like all of the ensemble are like the Greek chorus, and so the reaction shots are so crucial to the entire thing.
Approaching almost every scene, this is an ensemble cast, and approaching every scene, you're not just doing a two-hander, you're covering 7-8 people all the time.
Yeah, and especially in this scene, you've just come out of 2 different songs, all the dialogue on the balcony, and you're about to go into a fight. And you notice throughout the fight that we go around to all of the other characters a lot, because in a film like this, where the level of reality is very heightened, and you kind of need to know what the other characters feel about it. And in a lot of places, the peanut gallery and the supporting characters beat the audience to it in terms of their reactions. But that means a hell of a lot of coverage. I mean, I don't even know how many shots are in this sequence. Now, this scene...
And we haven't repeated one yet. And I'm not kidding.
Well, especially in this bit, yeah. Now, this sequence here, you'll see elsewhere on the DVD, we shot a test shoot for in July 2008 with myself, Bill Pope, Marcus Rowlands, our production designer, Brad Allen, our stunt coordinator, most of our team, and Fraser Churchill, our double negative visual effects supervisor. This we shot a version of, which you'll be able to find elsewhere on this
proof of concept test, just to see if...
I was going to say DVD Blu-ray, but I was also thinking about in the future, maybe people will be watching this on a different format. Who knows? Maybe it'll be downloadable on a Cracker Bread or something. I don't know.
They'll just be thinking about it.
Oh yeah, it'll be downloaded into your brain. You may find this visual effects test elsewhere in your brain,
somewhere in your cerebellum.
But let's talk about the flares. Because it's funny, flares get a bad rap these days sometimes. But our inspiration for the flares was partly a musical thing. One of the inspirations, even though they're used a lot in action films, is actually Bob Fosse, like Cabaret and Sweet Charity and a lot of the old musicals, all that jazz, would use flares a lot. And explain, Bill, about spherical versus anamorphic in terms of the structure of the film.
We felt like there's a movie with realism and magical realism, and the fights are certainly in the magical realism part, and we wanted to heighten reality and make it more theatrical in these sequences. So one of the tip-offs is that we used anamorphic lenses, which are ordinarily widescreen lenses, in which it squeezes the images and then stretches it out later and makes it widescreen. But one of the things it does that gives you those incredible flares, all those blue flares that are going on, we actually didn't use it for the widescreen capacity of it. We lopped the widescreen edges off and just gave it to you normal.
Well, you can see right here, there's a widescreen shot. And then it goes to full screen by the end of it.
Yeah.
So there for one shot in the sequence, we were using the full anamorphic.
Yeah. There's a lot of frame size changes in this thing, a la comics, and just...
It's funny, people don't really notice the ratio changes at all, which is interesting, because people just... the idea with the ratio changes was not only as a nod to comics and comic book panels like this, in terms of how sometimes Brian lays things out in the comic, but also in a lot of Japanese animation, they use black bars in a lot of anime like Cowboy Bebop and Naruto and Samurai Jack, like the Nickelodeon show uses that a lot. But also in a lot of video games, when they have cut sequences, like the filmic bit at the start of a game, will always have fake letterbox to make it look more like a film. So I thought because this has so many video game references in it, it would be really interesting to use fake letterbox. Now, here's about to get crazy again. This sequence was very complicated. Here we go. Now we shot Satcher, who's playing Matthew Patel, is on a rig, a fork rig, which I believe was designed for The Matrix. Is that right?
First time I know of it being used was the Matrix to fly Keanu and Lawrence around. to make them look weightless, so you can flip them and turn them.
Well, Satya, who plays Patel, is in the location, but Christine, who plays the dancing girl, the demon hipster chick, she was on a blue screen, and sometimes Satya is on a blue screen as well, but a lot of these sequences are going from normal to that's blue screen, obviously blue screen, and that's blue screen, but then in the middle of the shot it goes down to real photography.
To shoot the demon hipster chicks, we obviously only had one, so we would line her up and then line her up with 8 different cameras to give you different perspectives on her, 4 to 8 cameras, and then those images would be laid in to create 4.
I just consulted my notes to tell you that the demon hipster chick's name is Christine Watson. I couldn't remember her surname, but I do now. But she had a full day, the poor girl, in those contacts.
She was incredible.
Where I don't know how many times she performed the routine, but we had to shoot her from 4 different cameras, is that right?
Yeah, at least. We had up to 8, but we were is that right?
We had 4 cameras because we had to replicate every girl from 4 different angles.
4 different angles, you're right.
But we shot her for like a proper 13-hour day. A 13-day hour.
It felt like 13 days to her, I'm sure.
I'm sure. I was kind of, it was also one of those things where, like, you have to listen to that song.
She's also on a fork rig, which is completely uncomfortable, and she's wearing contacts, so she's blind, and she has to perform the song over and over again. So she felt like she was tortured by the end of the day, I'm sure.
Not just that, but also, which one of the things that we use a lot in this film, and I don't know whether it's apparent watching it, but we use a hell of a lot of flashbulbs going off. And the flashbulbs are timed in with, like, because in that last sequence you had fireballs, you had people appearing, and because there's a lot of digital effects in places that are put onto real photography, the way of tying them together was setting off a flashbulb on the set and setting off a flashbulb on the blue screen photography, so the two tie together, which works really well. But it means that I would usually, like, pull the trigger myself of setting off these flashbulbs in time with the music, and then later in the fights we use it a lot. I'll point out some of the other places where it gets, possibly epilepsy-inducing in terms of the amount of flashbulbs going off. But it was.
Weren't you given a trigger?
As my rap gift?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I set off so many. How many light bulbs did we set off during the shoot?
We denuded all the light bulbs in North America, I do believe.
But like 8,000, something crazy like that.
Flash bulbs.
8,000 flash bulbs.
They're not made anymore, really. They're kind of rare.
Lucas Lee is not important to you right now. Get out.
This on the TV here, this is the first thing that we shot after the test. But the first thing we shot in 2009 was Chris Evans at the docks in Toronto. I think this was down
freezing cold.
Freezing cold. This was in January or February? February. It was really, really cold. But we shot that little sequence of a film called Cold Call. I think Cold Call is like the first 5 minutes of Die Hard with a Vengeance played out to like 3 hours.
Which is our next movie, as a matter of fact.
I'd be up for that. Phone Booth 2. This is on Bloor and Bathurst, which is kind of like the hub of where Scott Pilgrim land is, really. It's
Brian's world.
Like pretty much like a very sort of college area. And this is a shop which we saw earlier called Sonic Boom. Now here, the bit where it goes into blackness at the end of this scene, again, it was with the blue screen, but it was shot on location, so the lighting wouldn't change. So even though we're in this record shop, we flew in a blue screen behind Michael and Ellen, which we did quite a few times like that to try and...
to make it as real as possible.
Yeah, and also kind of not take the actors out of the scene, because it would be...
Yeah, take them to a stage and then make them redo it again.
Yeah.
They're in character now and keeps them going.
And it's easy to do that with action stuff, but with performance stuff, it's not very helpful to the actor to come back. So that was done on the same day. These were shot in the record store, believe it or not.
I think the actors all appreciated the pace that we worked in this movie. We did 200 shots, 200 setups the first week with an 8 camera, and we kept up that pace the whole time. The actors, they never even went back to their trailers. They were just able to just keep working, and it keeps them in character. It keeps them away from that boredom that actors have to deal with all the time.
Although I would feel sorry for some of the actors who weren't directly involved in the fights, because I think sort of the principals who would be in the fights, but I think like Johnny, Mark, and Allison, and even like in that last scene, like the people on the balcony, like they'd either be there for half the day and then like, half not. And so I always like, especially when we did the fight scenes and there were other people in the background who couldn't be doubled, like Mark and Johnny and Alison Pill, I'd always find myself going up to Alison Pill and like sort of hugging her and saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry," because she's basically in the back of a lot of wide shots for weeks on end.
Alison was glad to be there. She's from Toronto. She got to visit her folks.
That's right. But I mean, that's one of the things actually, in a weird way, that I think I'm really pleased about. Hopefully it adds to the film, is that the actors got to hang out all the time, and I hope that chemistry and that feeling of them really being friends comes across, because they really were. And there wasn't anybody on the film that didn't get on, and even sometimes if it feels like the exes themselves are almost like they're too funny to be completely hateful, it's probably because everybody got on like a house on fire. Like, like Jason Schwartzman particularly is like the nicest guy in the world, and so it's like it's funny getting him to play like sort of really evil, but he's still lovable even when he's really nasty.
It was singularly the actors, it was a love fest, really. The actors really got along with each other. They were completely professional, completely grown up. I've been on other movies where everybody got along, but nothing compares to this movie. This was a joy to be on all the time.
And it was a lot of fun. I think also because they, a lot of the cast are very young. They all got like sort of a lot of energy to kind of like keep up the pace of... Because every single scene is really complicated in some ways. It's not like the dialogue scenes in between the fights are very simple. There's lighting effects, there's, all sorts of things to keep up with, and, things where the timing is... In every sequence, the timing is, like, really critical, whether it's a comedy scene or a music scene or a fight scene. They're all very choreographed, and they all have, like... There's no one scene that didn't have some kind of, like, complicated element, Whether it's... I mean, this is actually some of the simplest stuff in the film. I remember this being a real breather. I love this. And Michael, you don't have to dub Michael. Michael plays all these instruments. He plays the piano, he plays the guitar, and he has to fake being a bad guitarist. Well, this is him playing live, and there was a thought about like getting him to redub it so we could get his voice a bit stronger. And when I said to Michael, I said, "So I think we might try and redub your song," and he was like, "No." And then even Nigel Godrich just sort of said, "No, it's perfect." He said it sounds real, so that's really him doing it. Now here's a scene. Given this is a simple scene, I love that shot. I like the lesbians kissing in the background, and. I'm making a sweeping generalization that they might not be lesbians. They might just be...
That's true.
They might be just curious.
Roommates.
Roommates, friendly. They might just be getting friendly. This is real. So Michael is really pausing there. It's kind of a little tribute to Police Squad, the end credits Police Squad. But Michael is doing his own freeze, and the lights went down and came up, and that's Bill Hader's voice. Although on the day, Michael Bacall, who was my co-screenwriter, was off camera saying the lines. So Michael was leaving all these pauses. So again, it's like very theatrical in a way. It's obviously the animation comes later, but we leave the pauses for the voiceover. We do the lighting effects for real. So it's nice doing all these theatrical effects. And little gags like that, like the hat gag and him changing t-shirts. We cut a little bit out when he puts the costume on, but Mary just stands there and waits for Michael to come back. This is a location. This is Casa Loma, which is a real castle, essentially like a folly in Toronto, right? It's like
It's a rich man's folly.
Yeah.
But it's Xavier's school and X-Men.
For gifted youngsters. It's kind of, I guess it's like Toronto's answer to Hearst Castle, although unlike Hearst Castle, it's actually finished and it gets used for a lot of functions and weddings and a lot of locations. Like this was in the X-Men, but it was also the castle for the Love Guru.
Oh, you're right.
In the and downstairs in the basement, they would have all the posters of all the other films that it would appear in, like Jackie Chan's The Tuxedo, The Pacifier, Love Guru, and the reason that like Brian put this scene in the books is because he'd been walking past Castelloma one day and they'd been shooting a film which turned out to be a Hilary Duff film called The Perfect Man, which Adam Siegel and Mark Platt, two of the producers of this film, actually produced as well, which is crazy. So here, this girl, Emily Cassie, who's playing a character called Winifred Haley, is essentially like a version of Hilary Duff. And this film is called, if you see the clapperboard, if you look back at the clapperboard, this film is called Talk to the Fist.
And who's playing our director?
Don McKellar is playing our director, essentially dressed up as me, but Don McKellar, who is a fantastic multi-hyphenate writer, actor, director. He basically does everything. He's even like won a Tony for like a Broadway musical.
No way.
The Drowsy Chaperone. But he's a director that I became friends with because I loved his film called Last Night. Now, that stunt, that was one of our stunt people, Riley, who...
Always double, Michael.
Riley Jones did that stunt. And he falls down the scaffold, and then there's a very clever edit between Riley doing the stunt and Michael, which is pretty seamless.
It's pretty old school.
It's pretty old. It's kind of sophisticated old school because Double Negative have fooled the eye by making the debris fall down in real time over the change.
But Jackie Chan would have done it live.
Yeah. Well, Jackie Chan, he has the broken bones to prove it. Riley, though, the stunt double, Michael's stunt double in that scaffold stunt was 18 years old. And he's the son of a stuntman. And so definitely he was born into stunts. And the main guy in the middle there, Ruben, was the guy who played Scott Pilgrim in our test shoot that we did when we did our sort of Patel versus Scott Pilgrim. Now this is a sequence that like was choreographed by Brad Allen, who is our stunt coordinator, and my brief to him was like a Jackie Chan fight from Police Story. So, and the great thing about Brad Allen is he is an amazing... Brad Allen and Peng Zhang, his choreographer, are both incredible. And, you know, if you do the storyboards for something and you've written out the scene and you've done the storyboards, like what they choreograph becomes kind of like 3 times more complicated in the best way possible. And so, like, that fight kind of like started to turn into something which, you know, I was just exceeded what, like, my highest expectations of the scene. I was really pleased with that fight. And also Brad is the one who very much pushed for us to do a continuous shot where you could, you know, go between Michael and a stunt double seamlessly. Because the interesting thing with this film, unlike a lot of superhero films, is there's no masks. So the stunt people really have to hide in plain sight. It was one of the reasons that Michael is wearing that hat for this scene, was as a way of keeping his hat on so we could do that stunt with him getting whacked over the head with the skateboard.
Right.
And get the one in the face because he gets whacked twice with the skateboard. It's basically under Michael's hat he had this protective, what was it, like an iron skull cap or something?
It was probably some sort of Teflon or something, but it protected his head. I'm sure it still hurt, to be honest with you.
I think it did. You know, I know it did.
You heard about it.
I heard that it did. I saw it with my own eyes and I heard it. But it's, even though it was a soft skateboard and like he had the skull cap, like I think it still left a mark.
Your head does not like being hit.
No. Especially when you can't see it coming. In a weird way, like, sort of, if you're being hit...
Turning around blindly and getting hit in the head, sure.
Oh, not just that, but also being hit from behind when you don't know it's coming. It's like, if you know you're about to be hit, you tense up. But if it's coming from behind you, you don't, like, you're being surprised. So I think it's a lot worse. So that Michael did really amazingly in that fight. And we shot that, again, obviously, this is shot at night.
This, of course, is not real. This is... They're standing on level ground, and they're looking at it on level ground. Those stairs were created later and put in.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing matte painting.
Somebody get me my board.
What I like about this, actually, one of the style of the effects and kind of the brief for Double Negative was it's not entirely, it's not...
That's a real stunt. Chris did that.
Oh, yeah. Chris did that stunt. He had to make that rail, and he was really worried about getting it right, and we did it at 5 a.m, and he nailed it on take 5. But you can see here the style of the artwork is that it's kind of very painterly. I wanted this kind of feel of it being kind of everything... it's kind of like, there's a level of reality that's just, it's very picturesque. It's not entirely real, but it has realistic elements in it, whether that's the snow or the lens flare and stuff. But that's the great thing about this source material, is because it's not serious and it's magical. You could do a lot of stuff that you just couldn't get away with in The Dark Knight, say, because it wouldn't be right for the material. But this like sort of film has absolute full license to let your imagination run riot.
What's the deal? Seriously. Yep, you said that last.
Hey, here's my only contribution to the movie coming up.
That's right.
Right there. The infinity sign.
Bill pointed out that, like, sucks with 8 underneath on its side would be sucks infinity. I thank you for that.
I contributed.
You get residuals.
I get infinite.
I think you're on the first dollar gross with Universal for that contribution. That's not legally binding. This was another thing. Oh my God! Here's another smelly thing. Was that somebody forgot to empty that fridge, and like that fridge was full of food, and somebody, I don't know why they put food inside, but basically it was.
We have to release this in smell-o-vision.
Oh my God! Basically, it didn't stink. If anybody opened the door, you got a whole whiff of rotting stuff that had been on that stage for weeks, and it took ages to clear. So,
oh my God,
the poor guys. I mean, this was. I mean, again, like with this set, it kind of felt a bit like doing when I did the TV show Spaced. Over the course of 14 episodes, we had shot every single corner of that apartment, and on this film, we'd done exactly the same. Wallace's apartment. We had even that tiny little bit where they're sitting on the floor in the kitchen, that was storyboarded. Storyboarded so Marcus knew that he had to bring out a wall here so we could get down on the floor to shoot the two of them in between the kitchen counter and the wall. So one of the good things, actually, partly weirdly because of the writer's strike, and we started developing this film I've been working on this film on and off for 5 years, but we'd storyboarded a lot of it by the time we started prep, which is unusual. So we had a lot of storyboards way, way, way in advance, which of course is incredibly helpful. And so a lot of it was plotted out. That back there, the shot with the phone call, that was another like very theatrical, turning the lights down for the length of the phone call. And in fact, that shot of Bree on the phone was something that we did in pickups.
Here's some in-camera stuff.
Yeah. So that's Michael in the background and a stunt person in the foreground. Chris Mark, who is a sort of main stuntman for Scott, did the window jump. With not an easy stunt to do.
Not an easy stunt.
Jumping through a tiny window.
You're gonna hit that window, or you're not.
I think he did hit the kind of the top of it on one take.
Oh, the frame.
Yeah. Oh, that was a soft frame. It's like built from, what do they build that stuff from?
Balsa.
Yeah. But it was spongy, right? Wasn't it? The edge of the window.
Oh, maybe they might have gone that far.
This was the first action scene we shot. This is back in Cabbagetown in Toronto. And Michael, for a lot of these things, those things back there was on a wire, like so he could like leap and be pulled about. This is the amazing Mae Whitman.
Prepare to die, obviously.
Yeah, this was
She's a special effect in herself. She needs no wires.
yeah.
But I just cashed my last
With this in the
my brain.
what's interesting about this scene, and actually we kind of fought to keep this in the film because like after trying to tighten up the film a little bit, this always lots of people sort of suggested this as a potential cut, and the reason I always hang on to it is A, because it's a great scene, but B, it actually gives you, it's the only time you have an action scene in the daylight, because all of the action scenes are in nighttime venues or they're at night, and that was the only time you have any action in broad daylight. And for me, it kind of just let you have a little bit of air from the music venues and kind of like,
Right.
a lot of the fight scenes are designed around music venues, so it feels like different levels of a video game. But I thought it was really nice because it was a nice kind of scene from the books, and May and Michael are really funny in it. But it's just nice having like something on location in the daylight. This was shot in a real second cup on Queen Street West, which is a pretty busy area of Toronto. So it wasn't the easiest kind of like day doing all this stuff, was it?
Whose idea was the black boxes?
That was me and Bacall. That was it's not in the books. It's in our script.
And you thought of the bit in front of and behind on that location, didn't you?
No, that was always in the always in the script. In fact, that was probably the only reason for having that bit was that joke of putting the hand in front of the black box. Or I guess the idea of the joke of like that, you've seen that kind of thing before of black boxes, but the idea that Michael could see it, it's actually there. So, the X's have their different superpowers, but Aubrey's power is to conjure up censored boxes. Obviously, that joke wouldn't have worked so well if the film was rated R, but because it's a PG-13, it's absolutely applicable. And this is so that was
To line up.
yeah, that was quite tricky to line up her against her own poster. Because actually, earlier in the shot, you see that poster behind Mary, like just for setup. Here comes the hat out of nowhere. It's funny, audiences either like laugh really loud at that. I say half the audience laugh really loud, and I think the other half don't even spot the continuity error. It always makes me giggle that. It's so silly. It was great kind of having the chance to do some very silly gags in this.
Totally come.
That's so not going.
Yeah, it was quite, it's, you can see outside that like people are walking past and there's even snow outside, and it's tricky shooting in
A real
locations.
place.
Yeah,
Inside and out, walking from outside to inside.
well, also, didn't we have to hold traffic as well?
Yeah.
Which doesn't go down well.
On Queen Street, the busiest street.
The busiest street in Toronto. Oh, if anybody was held up in traffic, if anybody was late for a date and maybe got dumped, well, I apologise. And I can assure you, the coffee shop scene was worth it.
Free coffee at the second cup.
Basically, go into any coffee shop and have a free coffee on me if in any way you were held up by us shooting on that day. Oh, this is a funny... It's nice, like, I mean, there's a lot of scenes that have a lot of coverage, and then it's nice to do, like, a scene which pretty much all of the dialogue plays out in one extended shot. That's nice. Not for too long. Here comes another cup.
I love the SARS t-shirt. It makes me laugh every time I see it.
That's straight from the comic. That was Brian's one. I kind of thought if anybody ever complained that we were making light of the SARS crisis, I'd blame it on Brian Lee O'Malley. Throw it straight back to the creator. Well, I was just taking it from the comic. I wasn't making any kind of aspersions about SARS or trying to make light of a terrible tragedy. I love... These guys were so like amazing to have around. Like
Their timing is so incredible.
Yeah.
It's just a joy to watch these guys work.
I know. Oh my god, Ellen Wong was so method that she
Those are Ellen's tears.
that was real Ellen's tears, and basically Ellen made herself sad. She had an iPod with sad songs on it, and she got so in the zone that once she started crying, she couldn't stop crying. It was like opening kind of like a floodgate, and it was impossible to stop her from crying.
We're gonna have to give her an IV.
It looked amazing, but I did forbid her from using it again. I said you can't use the sad pod again because it set her off, and it was like talking to somebody who was underwater. But I bless her, it was amazing because like Ellen Ellen, I can't, like her preparation to play Knives was that she basically was Knives for the entire shoot. I've never seen somebody who kind of like so invested in their character. It was amazing. She did such an incredible job.
But I know how to get 'em.
And there's so much detail in this set, which it's so fast, this montage, but there's a lot going on that these guys, the Marcus and his art department, did incredible like detail. This, I believe, that facade of Lee's Palace doesn't exactly exist like that anymore.
Is that right?
It crumbled and it was repainted shortly after we filmed it. Now, again, in reality, this is a real music venue in Toronto, but we had to recreate it as a set for what reason, Bill Pope?
Because we destroyed it.
Because, those music venues are... Also, a lot of these places have really low ceilings, which makes it impossible to do...
You're going to blame it on me, aren't you?
No,
You're going to blame it on Lee.
No, it's... Of course we couldn't have shot it in the real place. Impossible. But I'm asking the question in terms of...
It was. All the lights had to go up in the ceiling, and we had to move things and destroy buildings, and we had to get access to the alley behind. I don't even know if the alley exists in real life.
Not exactly as it does here. There's Brian and Hope.
Yeah, there's our author.
But it was amazing. I mean, it's really interesting doing like a film which is shot in so many music venues as sets because they felt really real. They did such a good job of aging it and the detail.
Incredible scenic painters, really. Marcus did an incredible job of this. I mean, people walked into this thing who were from Toronto and said, "This is it. This is the real place." It was indistinguishable from the real place.
And actually, some of the bands that came on set, like Broken Social Scene and Metric and Plumtree, who all came down to this location, they all commented on the fact that we'd recreated the old Lee's Palace, and they were nostalgic about the old bar, because I think the bar in this one is how it used to be rather than how it is now.
Right.
Now, a lot of these music sequences we shot on a Saturday. We shot 5-day weeks, but on Saturday would usually be either like a second unit day doing stunts or some effect stuff.
Music videos.
Or music videos. And, so it would be a lighter day in inverted commas. It would never turn out to be a lighter day. But the idea was to shoot the music videos on the Saturday so it would be a bit more fun in inverted commas. But usually, as you can see here, they're pretty, complicated sequences. But I remember, watching you operate on these sequences, especially I remember, shooting, Tennessee Thomas on drums, who is a real drummer, whose dad is Pete Thomas, who plays with Elvis Costello in The Attractions. So she's born into drumming royalty. But we shot, which you can see elsewhere on the DVD, we shot the entire song for posterity. And it was a lot of fun doing those bits, and the actors did such a great job on the music sequences.
It was a pleasure to be around music all day long, and most of the actors could actually play music, and not only could play, they were quite good.
Yeah.
Johnny, Michael, Jason.
Oh yeah, I guess even apart from that never fails to bring the house down, that gag, and it's the simplest gag in it. Maybe if we'd have done a load of more of text-based gags, we could have...
I think it works because it's once.
I know. Okay. You don't think a whole film of that would work?
A whole film of text gags might get kind of...
Emoticon the movie, think about it. We could make squillions. Emoticon the movie. It's like the new Transformers. All it does is it's like Transformers, but Transformers versus the Decepticons. It's the happy faces versus the sad faces.
I'm willing to bet after this commentary comes out that there will be Emoticon the movie on YouTube within 2 days.
Bruckheimer, are you listening? Emoticons. Happy versus sad. We can make it for $2,000.
And still make $1,800.
What? I'm not afraid to hit it.
This is another complicated scene. This is like another dinner party scene in inverted commas, because I'm saying inverted commas a lot. I don't know what's wrong with me.
You punch the highlights out of her hair.
There's a lot of actors in this scene, and a lot of angles, and it's very, again, coverage-wise, very complicated, because how many actors in the scene? 8?
That was an instance where he had to act to his own nameplate, or had to act to a sign that appeared next to his head, which wasn't there.
Oh, right. You notice if you look in the background of the shot, Tennessee disappears. See that? Because we wanted to, it was good to have her at the start of the shot, but it was much more striking to have just Michael and Brandon at the end, so the rings actually disappear Tennessee from the shot. Now, this is a very complicated shot which involves the use of VistaVision. Bill Pope, VistaVision, explain. Over to you. For the people at home...
VistaVision is a large format camera that was developed in the 50s, in which there was a large piece of film, so you can shoot for instance, in that shot where he gets thrown through the wall, you could see inside in the room and outside into the alley, and you don't have to use a pan to get out there. You can actually use a large piece of film, make a huge shot. We used it to shoot wide shots and close-ups at the same time.
Yeah, so it's really great because you can do this with digital cameras as well, but it was nice kind of keeping it old school with the VistaVision. But what you can use it for, which wasn't what it was invented for, is to do really extreme punch in. So that shot of Brandon, it zooms out to a massive wide shot without losing any picture quality. And it's useful for this film, which is comic booky and has kind of tableaus, and a lot of the fights sometimes have like the kind of very side-on 2D kind of compositions, You
can have perfect continuity between different size shots. I like using the same camera that they shot North by Northwest in.
Now sorry. I didn't.
Holiday Inn.
You used it on Spider-Man a lot, right?
Yes. It's used a lot as an effects camera now, even in the age of digital.
Now, this alleyway, I seem to remember, was, ironically, given that Michael gets thrown through a lot of walls, I seem to remember that I hit the wall. I think I hit the wall 3 times on this shoot. And one of them was definitely in this alley where I was so tired, I had terrible migraines, and the blocking of the scene was giving me super headaches. But it's actually, I'm really pleased with the scene, but I remember it particularly being just a day where I'd kind of lost it, or just, I was so exhausted. I also remember that it was the day that Michael Jackson died when we were shooting this location.
That's true.
On this set, rather. But I remember that vividly, that during lunch, the word got round that Michael Jackson had died.
So what's on Monday?
Because
That doesn't have any bearing on the scene.
No. It definitely affected people's minds, though.
Basically, you can't win this fight, so you're gonna have to give up on this girl.
This was this is an amazing set, like the Marcus Rowland built, because this alleyway is next to Lee's Palace. You can actually see in the shot coming up that we go from the alleyway back into the venue, which is all for real. Again, it's very theatrical that we move from the alleyway back into the venue where we just were. So all of these sets, even the bathrooms where like Mary and Ellen were earlier, are all interconnecting.
Edgar's talking about the shot that's coming up next.
This
shot right here, we go past them, in through the alley wall and into the real set. They're built one right next to another.
And then on top of that, at the end of the shot, Brandon comes down, although that's not Brandon, that's Paul Rapofsky, the stunt person playing Brandon. But that was all in the same shot, which was super complicated. It's good that. What was it, on the Technicrane?
Yeah, Technicrane. He was on a stunt sling.
Now, here's an example of, we've got air movers blowing cups around. We've got kind of the lighting kind of being affected by them playing. Now, some of these, 80% of these cups are real, and then there's the occasional digital ones that fly right past. But, and Double Negative done some cool effects on here. You can see these sort of like double imaging on Brandon sometimes when he's playing, and the extra kind of like shake that they put on things. But this, I'm really pleased with how this looks. This is a big number coming up. Now
that's why we couldn't shoot in a real club right there. That's
yeah.
True.
Now that shot where Michael, actually Riley, the stunt double, comes back through, that Brad Allen directed that shot because, like with some stunt shots, like a shot like a wall break like that is going to take you, I call it like a half-dayer. Because a wall break like that can take up to like 6 hours more.
Yeah.
It's a really, I mean, you can imagine how difficult that is to do more than one day.
You just have to be safe about it.
Yeah.
You have to be really careful.
But also, if you have to reset it, it's incredibly time-consuming.
True.
I mean,
You want to get
it's
it right
like,
the first time.
yeah, you need to get it right the first time, otherwise you're talking about another day to shoot it. This was, yeah, so this is all still interconnected. You saw that shot there where you look through the holes that you can see it goes right back to the Mainleys Palace Club. So that was great. Here comes Thomas Jane. And you can see another alleyway out through the back with the vegan police car, their little smart car. So there's like a second alley. This whole set was incredible. It was like a little Russian doll of different sets within sets. And then on top of that, the Kat Yanagi's set, which comes later, was outside of this. He built one set inside the other. We filmed this whole sequence, struck the whole set, and then shot another sequence in a set that was around it. I made that sound much more complicated than it is, but it was
pretty complicated.
It was pretty complicated.
You go into this set and get lost. And then we had to pull it all apart in order to light, 1,000 frames a second.
Oh, that's a good shot. There's a lot of complicated digital hair work going on there.
You once were a vegan, but now you will be.
Now, unlike the VistaVision, this one is shot on the Phantom, which is a digital camera which can shoot up to how many frames per second?
1,500.
So there used to be a thing called, what was the film way of doing it? Photosonics. Which was incredibly noisy and incredibly large.
And incredibly, you didn't know if you really got it till the next day. And this one, you can actually see it back at the time.
Yeah, if you've ever seen like old footage of like when you see like bullets being fired out of guns where they shoot it at like 100, sort of 1,500 frames per second, those cameras are enormous, right? Photosonics.
Yes. And
now they have this digital camera called the Phantom, which we used a lot, which is basically the size of a DVD player. And the amazing thing with the Phantom, although I don't know about you, but I definitely like the discipline of working on film more than I do working on digital. But the thing that was amazing about doing stunt shots on the Phantom is that you would immediately look at them back, and because it's always fun to watch things in slow motion in like an action replay, that people would always crowd around the Phantom monitor because it would always look cool. And also because the other thing that's great about, and I remember I think you coined this expression, is that watching things in slow motion, the most amazing thing, especially on this film, which doesn't have blood in it, or there's never blood coming out of people's mouths or no blood effects. The thing to watch is people's hair moving when big things are happening. So Bill, did you coin the expression hair porn?
Hair porn? I don't know. I wish I did.
Oh, maybe it was me. Oh, okay. I'm going to claim credit for it. Are you claiming credit for it, Bill?
I'll take credit for it.
But
the thing I always say about it is blowing hair is music. You blow hair in slow motion, it's just like the music in the soundtrack. You add music to it, it's like you planned it out.
Well, now my term of hair porn sounds like I'm, bringing it down. You described it so much more eloquently than me.
Okay, you can have the hair porn.
Bill describes it as like classical music. I describe it as porn. Which I think sort of is why we make the perfect team.
High and low. A movie that Michael was fascinated with in the course of this movie, actually.
Michael Cera is absolutely obsessed by Akira Kurosawa during this whole shoot, to the point where I bought him as his rap gift a poster for Kagemusha as like a sort of his rap gift. Now, this was another complicated scene. This was shot in a old tram shed, is that right?
Yeah, it's a tram shed.
But it's now a tram shed, which now is no longer a tram shed, which is now an
art barn, maybe?
An art barn. It's got lots of... Behind these panels, you can see... Where those lights are, you can see these kind of concrete panels. Behind each of those panels was a little artisan's shop that would sell, different kind of like...
Sometimes they were artists' houses. We were blocking their houses.
I know, and they would come out. They would, it would be, it would like we walled them in, and like sometimes within kind of scenes that they would come out from there, where we'd actually bricked up the outside of their stores. But this was a great location. I think we looked at several locations for this. This was one of the toughest locations to find, but what Marcus did with this tram shed is amazing, to make it look like a swanky party.
He really doesn't know.
The idea with this scene, which is something that doesn't appear in the books exactly like this, was that it always reminded me of, you know, I've got a lot of friends in the music industry, and more frequently than not, if you're in a band, you end up going to like some kind of like record label party which you instantly regret going into as soon as you've come in. And this is my idea of it being the party from hell, of the time when you knew you should have gone home. And that was the idea, is that Scott and Ramona really should have just kind of quit while they were ahead after you know, the vegan police incident, and gone home. But they went to another party, and then this happened. But this was a very complicated sequence. This is another like sequence where Brad and Pung and their team did incredible stuff. Like, not just with the stunt performers, but they really trained up the girls incredibly well. And that was one of the things actually with this film in terms of training the performers. Was I took up a lot of advice from Bill, because he'd done the Matrix films, but also I talked to Quentin Tarantino in depth about Kill Bill and about how they trained the non-martial artists to kind of do stuff. And you know what's great? That's Mary doing that stunt, right?
Yeah, okay. Some of this was designed around what they could do. Mary's axe kick was the finale of this fight is designed because Mary could actually do it, and it's really impressive.
Yeah, Mary basically had a ballet background, and Mae Whitman had been a cheerleader and had done gymnastics and rhythmic gymnastics in school. So they really brilliantly, which doesn't often happen, and
that kick.
But all credit to the team. They really designed the fights around the capabilities of the performers.
Yeah.
So even though there's obviously a lot of stunt performers in this as well, they are really playing to the strengths of the actors as well. And especially if you look in this scene, this is nearly all... You can see it's like Mary and May and Michael doing a lot of this, and it's kind of complicated stuff.
I love this scene.
Well, you watch like Mary is really like working really hard in this scene.
This is a pure Jackie Chan scene.
Oh, totally. This is very much my my homage to the golden days of Golden Harvest.
The Drunken Master.
You can see as well, talking about the light bulbs and stuff, this is a major... Bang, there goes the light bulb right there. A lot of lighting effects.
On any impact, it would be a light bulb.
Every pilgrim reaches the end of his journey. Some sooner than
This is
others.
May's kick.
Now, May could really lift her leg like that as well. Although when she gets to the top, somebody is holding it for her, but she actually could lift it above her head. I mean, this is what's so much fun making this film, is like how much the fight sequences are like dance numbers. It was always the idea that they should be like production numbers, that a lot of the great Hong Kong films have a real musicality to the fights, which you don't really get in many Western films, because a lot of the Hong Kong actors and directors came from a theatrical training and, you know, trained in the Peking opera. And so there's a big crossover between dancing and fighting. And you don't really get that in, like, Chuck Norris brawlers, because it would be considered effeminate. And Chuck Norris would never do a dance routine. But the great thing about this is because of the musicality of it, and, you know, especially in a fight like that with the two girls fighting and kind of fighting to the music, you know, we would have temp music that we'd play in as a tempo. So I had a track that we edited to for a long time, which I'd given to, you know, the stunt team. So they had an idea of what the tempo of the music would eventually be, which then Nigel then composed a piece of music to actually fit the fight itself. But music was such a big part of designing the action sequences that in a lot of cases, you know, we would have the tracks to play in, obviously in any of the things where people are performing, but even a scene like this, the actors and the stunt performers would know what tempo track it was going to be over the scene. I like these little tableau shots. You can kind of get away with those kind of composed shots in a film like this.
A little Frank Capra.
Yep.
Who the hell are the Katiyanagi twins?
Oh.
So here's another transition, go from the club straight. That's probably one of the few hard cut transitions in the whole thing. I think we actually designed one that was a bit more complicated, but it was actually nice to do something really simple.
This was fun to do too. I love this.
Oh,
this
yeah.
scene. Michael with the shortened bass so he could turn around.
Oh, yeah. We had a sort of, just on this shot alone, and the next shot, in fact. Yeah, he had a short neck, otherwise he would hit... Think about it, he would hit Mark Webber straight in the balls if he turned round like this. Ah! Right in the nuts. But of course, the magic of cinema, that just doesn't happen. Now, the reason it goes fully to black there and says later is because Johnny's hair got a lot longer.
I know, is that what
That's
happened?
why, well, originally it was supposed to be a hard cut. That it was storyboarded as being a hard cut, and then Johnny's hair length was a bit suspect. So I went to black and put later there, so nobody would notice. So I just given myself away, but I thought it was funny too.
I couldn't.
That's a VistaVision shot, isn't it? That
Yeah.
Actually, no.
Oh.
So this was the set which originally had Lee's Palace and everything else inside it. It shows you how big this set was. Is that the other, like, Lee's Palace kind of network of alleys and dressing rooms and everything was inside this. And this was a stage called the Jumbo Stage, which was not a real studio.
Not a stage.
Not a
at
stage. A converted, like, shed.
all. Just a shed.
Like an aircraft hangar or something?
I don't know. Sometimes I thought we were in an aircraft. There were so many planes passing over the top.
Oh yeah, we were right under the flight path here, so it was lucky in a way that this scene, unlike the Lee's Palace scene, didn't have a lot of dialogue. This came towards the end of the shoot. I think this is the last action set piece that we shot, and I'm really pleased that it was also a point where the crew and myself were properly exhausted, and so doing this incredibly complicated scene at the end was, was very taxing. But I'm really pleased with it. I think it looks amazing. What was also great with here, we had your guy who was the kind of the lighting technician on this.
Michael,
yeah, because he designed all the lights to go in time with the music,
right?
Which was
He
amazing.
coordinated the whole thing. It was a bit of luck to get Michael at the very end. But we also had enormous luck to have Jason show up at this point in the movie, because Jason couldn't come to the very end because of conflicts and because he was getting married.
Oh, that's right.
And when Jason blows into town, it's just like a fresh breeze just blows in with him. He just perks up everywhere. We were all exhausted at this point, actors and crew. And Jason came in and just picked our spirits up and carried us through to the end of the movie. It was really a joy.
Jason Schwartzman is basically like the human Barocca. He kind of he is just an amazing person to have around. So I would recommend, if you're on any film, when you're getting to the last couple of weeks of the shoot and everybody's exhausted, just hire Jason Schwartzman, put him in any part, and he will be like the perfect pick-me-up. Now these guys, like Shota and Keita, the Sato twins, they were amazing. They didn't speak any English, and it was actually really good fun to direct them because we had to do it essentially all visually, and they put so much into it. It's amazing. They're big stars in Japan, and when they came to Toronto, they got mobbed. When they went to visit the CN Tower, they got totally mobbed by, Japanese tourists or like the sort of Japanese population, because they were big kind of like teen idols, and they worked so hard. It was brilliant.
You met them in Japan?
I didn't, but I was on the TV show that they do.
Oh, I see.
With a different presenter, and in fact the other presenter, Lilico, who was like their sort of co-presenter, when they came to Toronto, she sent me a handwritten letter saying, like they were like sort of orphaned puppies, sent me this handwritten letter, said, this is Shota and Keita, please look after them. Which was really sweet. But I think she was amazed that I'd given them a part in the film and was so kind of happy and excited for them and stuff. It was really sweet for her to send a letter. Here's a sequence where it's gone fully into like widescreen. You can see the black bars at the top and bottom, and we did this for the whole scene here, so we get the
full good, bad, and the ugliness of it.
Well, you can see now. Now it goes back to full screen again. See it.
Sliding up.
See it. And then back to 185. There's a lot to talk about in that last sequence. There's an amazingly complicated sequence.
Which we didn't talk about at all.
Well, we talked about the twins and everything else. Here's another bit of light interaction. Real kind of light being. That was real. We try to do that all the time. It really, really helps. I think it really helps the actors when there's nothing to look at, is if there's, like, light or, like... I mean, the other thing about that last scene is, let's talk a little bit about air cannons and wind blasters.
Oh, my God. We should get hazard pay. Snow falling, real snow falling on us. Not real snow, but I mean, we were making the snow. And blasting it back in the actors' faces with huge ritters.
Ritters are fans.
Air fans, yes.
Yeah. But they were the massive ones. They were probably like kind of like the aircraft engine, jet engine kind of like style fans.
We had them everywhere. We would literally bend that audience over with wind.
I know the extras in that scene got properly blasted, and they were there for a long time as well. Those extras.
I'll take this moment to take my hat off to the Toronto extras. They were really into the movie. They loved being there. They returned again and again, and they really gave their all. And there were some hard sequences where they had to stay up all night long many times, and stand up on concrete floors and act and have water, wind, snow, ice thrown at them. They loved it.
The most fun thing I would do with the extras, actually, at the end of any time that we shot with them, was I would usually come back after we'd been shooting something else, and you do a like a wild track, it's called, where you record sound, and I would come back because most of the time extras, even if they're reacting and they're supposed to be cheering, they're doing so silently because people are talking in the foreground. And then I came back at the end, and I would, both in the Patel scene and in this scene, I would explain what was going on, and they would react accordingly. And it was like playing a theremin, because like you would be sort of conducting the crowd, like to sort of like people on the left, people on the right, and then trying to describe the scene to them without the effects of saying, okay, so now Sex Bomb have got a sonic yeti, and now the twins have got this dragon made out of snow, and now they're fighting, loud response, cheer. And so it was always kind of fun, and I think actually the extras, after like weeks of being told to cheer silently, then at the end of like the sequence they can properly roar. And the extras in those sequences did an amazing job, especially in some of those sequences where they had to be replicated.
And they sang me happy birthday.
That's right, at Lee's Palace.
I just now remember that.
I think that's on the making of.
That's funny.
This was shot in summer, I think. I seem to remember this was July. This is right at the end. This is August.
Yeah.
This is one of the last exteriors we did. Now, see, on a sequence like this, talking about music, Michael had... This is Beck singing Ramona, and Michael had this playing on set so he could thump his head in time with the post.
Walk in time?
Walk in time, yeah, he's walking in time with the music. Thump his head in time with the music, not thump his head in time with the post. Forgive me, viewers. I have completely lost it.
Was she really the one?
This is shot on a stage. The first shot was shot on location, and now we're on a stage. But it looks beautiful. I love the lighting on this scene, actually. I've often kind of like commented on how great the lighting on them looks. It looks really beautiful.
Next time, we don't date the girl with 11 evil ex-boyfriends.
7.
Oh, that's not that bad.
I know the jetpacks line is always one that seems to be like a way homer.
Is it?
I think half the audience get it, and then there's like a sort of a delayed reaction.
I just love her getting the phone call at the end and walking up. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pathetic.
Presumably.
There's something inherently funny about the vibrate noise. Like, phone rings are not funny, but... is always funny. As Brian Lee O'Malley would spell it in sound effects, I think this is what gave me the idea, is in the books, a vibrate would be V-R-R-R-M. This is an amazing shot to have, like, 2 gay characters, 1 straight character, and the panties of 2 maybe lesbians in the background. Let's call them maybe lesbians. We don't know what the real story was. We'll call them Mabians. 2 Mabians.
for you, big guy.
I like this next shot actually when it turns into sort of back into thriller mode. It goes from a nice intimate scene, and now we're back into kind of like.
I don't want any hard feelings, so I figured.
This is a proper thriller shot.
Just give you a call.
Is Ramona with you?
Jason makes such a good bad guy.
I don't know.
This was Jason's first scene that he shot.
Yeah.
And
Jeez, buddy, it's gonna.
He's ad-libbing all this patting of Mary. Mary had a tough time keeping a straight face.
he started to turn Mary into Blofeld's cat. He's turned into sort of like Ernest Stavros Blofeld, and he's like picking her hair for like nits. It's like I love the way he sort of treats her like a sort of a complete kind of pet. It's very sort of it's perfect.
What do you say? Okay, laters.
Yeah, the idea with like sort of which is something that came out of like Brian's books. There's one of the like a dream sequence where Ramona is sitting at like sort of Gideon's feet as his kind of slave, which is something that like is in one of the dream sequences and doesn't really occur like this in Volume 6. But we kind of kept with it as I like this idea of her being subservient to her. And in fact, the chip in Ramona's head is an idea that Brian had way back in his original notes, which he didn't actually do anything with in the final book, but we really liked it, so we kept it. I love this shot coming up. This is one that came up on the day, going into the blackness there, going into the real blackness.
Second password.
And do you remember on this location here, there was a dead cat?
Dead cat.
For some reason, in that location, there was a petrified cat that looked like it had died of fright. And like, you know what? When you see a dead cat on location, you don't feel like eating any mid-morning snacks anymore. When they bring around the burritos, like I'm thinking, I don't know, I just saw a dead cat. I'm not really hungry anymore. Now, Bill, would you like to say some words about Marcus Rowland's amazing Chaos Theatre set?
This is Marcus Rowland's amazing torture chamber. Again, if the differences in elevation are what torture accrue, this was a perfect torture chamber. But it was a brilliant set, and it really Edgar and Marcus had the idea of making basically a social indicator from this set. Edgar?
Yeah, well, basically the idea, here's the funny thing, is that this is kind of based on one of the things in one of Brian's books, but we took it a lot further. We thought that if this is the ultimate kind of like Ponzi nightclub, that Gideon's VIP area would be so exclusive it would be a pyramid, so essentially he could only be at the top of his own VIP area. Now there's like a midsection where people could stand, but there's a VIP area that's so exclusive that only 2 people can really be on top. Now, a great idea, and visually it's amazing, and I'm really pleased with the finished results, but on a practical level, to shoot a fight scene around this pyramid was really tricky, because the 2 fights, take place all around the pyramid, and is it once you get above 8 feet, you have to have safety platforms for the crew and the actors? And it was, so any shot where we're up here, we're on platforms at the same level as the pyramid. And it just meant that pretty much that throughout the rest of the film, we had shot in sequence, and we'd always shot in the kind of the Hong Kong way of shooting in order, rather than usually what people do is they shoot one way before lunch and the other way after lunch. And with the pyramid sequence, because of the amount of time it took for the platforms, we had to shoot it in a very broken up way, which was okay in that we had it really planned out, but it was certainly a lot more time consuming than any of the other fight scenes. And I sat there, I remember on the first day on the pyramid set, sitting there as I realized how complicated it would be, and we'd shoot like 30, 40 setups a day, more, 40 setups?
40 setups a day.
Pretty much 40 setups, and when we got to the pyramid set, it would be 10 setups a day. And we actually went over schedule by a number of days just because of this set was actually very complicated. However, all that said, I'm very pleased with it, and it looks amazing.
Yeah, you wouldn't trade it, but
no.
Hats off to Rico and all the grips who figuring this out, because you really had to tackle it like you were going to war. It had to be planned to the nines. And it wasn't like we had, spare time to go plan it. They had to do it in their off hours.
Yeah.
It had to all be figured out. We were tired when we left the set.
The other thing that really helped is that in terms of the fight sequences is that, Brad and Pung and his team had got it all figured out in sequence, because the way that you do these fight scenes is that you don't shoot a big wide and then do close-ups. It's all shot in in pieces, it's like a little jigsaw. So the good thing about that is you could shoot. We would jump around in the schedule during this fight, and because we had rehearsal videos, sometimes featuring the actors, it would be very easy to say, and now we're doing this bit, and now we're doing this bit, and the actors wouldn't get too lost because we would have something to show them how to work it. But it's still incredibly complicated, and as you can see in a lot of the sequences, you've got the actors are doing a lot of the work, sometimes with a stunt performer, sometimes the two of them, sometimes both stunt performers. And credit to Brad and Pung, they work all this stuff out and work it out to the capabilities of the actors, which stunt person is going to be right for which particular reverse. So, and hopefully it's pretty seamless that you wouldn't be able to notice when there's a stunt performer and when there isn't. And also the actors did an amazing job, and it's really tricky. You've got 4 people fighting on top of this tiny. How big was that?
It's it's probably 12-foot square, but it's tiny with 3 people up there.
Yeah. Nobody fell off, which was good.
You cheated on both of us?
Bill, you've gone silent. Please confirm that nobody fell off.
No, no, that's very good. Again, hats off to all those people who were putting those platforms around, and all the stunties who were helping us stay on that thing. Everybody was concerned with safety all the time.
Well, also, you had, the LED screens behind, if you watch, are actually pulsing in time with the actions. So, we had somebody on a mixing desk, following the fight and basically kind of making the waveform move in time with the fight.
And the fight and the music and our voices and whatever we felt like doing. We had somebody who could coordinate that. But basically it was there to interact with the music. The lighting was incredibly complicated in that place.
It looks amazing. For all of the difficulties and challenges of that sequence, which, every fight sequence in this film was complicated, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of this is the one that might kind of might finish us off.
Well, it was supposed to. It was the final fight. We were supposed to pull out all the stops, and we did.
Yeah.
And it's what it feels like. It feels like, it's a fight to the death. It feels like.
Well, it basically.
Really
what do you have that over here? Do you have that game King of the Castle, or is it called something else? King of the Mountain.
King of the Hill, is the only thing we call it.
Yeah, King of the Castle in the UK, where it's basically that's the idea with the end fight is that whoever stays on top wins, and so the way it's kind of designed is that people are falling down to the mid step or down to the bottom, and Gideon is the king of cool, and he's trying to stay on top.
Right.
And that's why he's constructed, in rather unlikely fashion, a Mayan pyramid within his nightclub.
It's both, classic in terms of kids' mythology and in terms of our real mythology.
Although it's worth pointing out that there are no killer vines that can imitate cell phones within that Mayan pyramid. My friend gives me stick for I'm a big fan of the ruins. I don't know why I'm talking about the ruins on the commentary for Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, but there are no killer vines inside that Mayan pyramid. Let's just point that out. Anyway, my talk about the ruins has completely glossed over that Dream Desert thing. Now we're into another scene. Let's get away from the ruins and the vines and back into Scott Pilgrim. That's the Zoetrope effect. I love that shot, and I also think Michael is his most badass on that shot. I think that's Michael's most badass moment in the film.
Yeah.
He really lamps him.
Scott, let it go. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Steven, the new lineup rock
This,
way better without me. Young Neil, you have learned well. From this point forward, you will be known as.
I love I think Johnny Simmons has never been happier than he was in that costume. He was really working his kind of smart suit and his kind of his special sneakers he had on.
He had the girls going crazy.
Yep. Simmons is a lady killer. We have that on record now. Watch out, ladies. He's a dark horse. But I tell you what I always remember about this is that whenever those guys were around, I particularly remember Johnny Simmons playing guitar in between every setup.
Johnny could really play.
But he would be playing a particular kind of like slide guitar kind of thing that he would be doing all the time.
Alison was terrific in this scene too. She gets to smile for the only time in the whole movie.
Now, Michael's sword, it's worth pointing out that he had, in some scenes, he had a short sword for fighting the hipsters there.
He always had something in his hand.
Yeah.
But short sword with lights in it that lit up and cast light on people.
Yeah.
LED lights in it. And it also gave him something to work with.
Yeah, so in this scene here, like, his sword actually had LEDs inside it, so it would cast a red or purple glow into the scene. But in the scene where he fights all those hipsters on the ground floor, he had the short sword, so he could basically samurai his way through them. And in fact, he had some incredibly complicated moves to do with that sword. It's the one where he slides across the floor. I remember it's the one time Michael asked, I think we were shooting it at like 1 a.m, and he asked very, very politely, said, is it possible we could do this tomorrow morning when I'm a bit more awake? And I said, absolutely. And so we went off and shot something else, and Michael came back in the morning and nailed it. Here we go, we're into the final fight. This film is we've just been yabbering. This film is almost over.
We'll take questions later.
Yeah. Put questions on a postcard, and me and Bill will spend the rest of our lives answering them. I promise.
Answering both of them.
Well, the 2 questions that we left out saying, what was that film with the killer vines again? So Jason and Michael both here have long swords, and in some cases, this scene is just crazy. Again, like, we're on top of this pyramid. It's like all this stuff is incredibly complicated to just plan out. I don't know how many days did we shoot this for? 10 days? More.
Thankfully, I cannot remember. But just the coordination of swords, if you just thought about that alone, is mind-boggling.
I'm really...
You do all the angles, shoot everything out in one direction.
Yeah. And you'd also get as well, like, you know, there'd be very few kind of shots where, like, sort of, like, the principals are not involved. Like, there's obviously some shots with stunt doubles, and some of those sometimes would be shot on the Saturday with the stunt team, like, particularly the overhead shot spinning around with Michael fighting. But, you know, for the most part, you know, in a big action film, like, if there's a car chase, like, the second unit will do the car chase. But with this film, the actors are always in it, so it's always, like, main unit stuff, which is great because it means that you're all working on it together. It's not something, you know, that's kind of being shot in tandem.
They also add so much more. They're so inventive. All these people, they're just, you know, they add so much more to having the actor there than having to hide a stunt person's face.
But the great thing is that they really designed the fight sequences so the actors could do as much as possible, which is great. This is crazy. Shooting those freeze frames of Jason. That was one of my first big ideas. I wanted to do more of that in the film, but like it basically ends up in that sequence, but it looks insane. Oh my god. The colours in this scene, fantastic. I mean, not just the lighting of the stage and stuff, but then if you contrast it with the colour of the graphics, you know, harking back to... Now, this part of this is like a reshoot that we did. We came back and did some extra stuff months later, which, you know, reshoots have a negative kind of connotation to them because it usually means trouble, but in this case, especially with this scene, it's like a gift. It's like, we basically came up with a funnier joke for Jason at the end. Right. And so we got Jason back just to do this monologue right here, because we felt that the original scene was fine, and that joke with the coin, that wasn't in the original version. So some of this sequence is shot like 10 months later, 8 months later, which is insane.
I cannot even remember why we redid it, but
I'm glad we did. But basically to give Jason a proper rant.
Right.
It was, you know, like before it was a bit shorter, and we just felt like he needed to go even more insane. And Jason flew in. He was shooting Bored to Death, and he flew in for essentially 32 hours. Mm-hmm. And turned it up to 11 for every single take of that monologue.
Yeah,
And
a great deal of fun.
I think he lost his voice at the end of it.
No one could keep a straight face.
It's Sex Bomb's last shot.
There goes our deal.
There goes our deal.
Now, watching this sequence, Johnny Simmons picks up a coin and eats it like he thinks it might be made out of chocolate. There you go. He just manages to eat a coin at the end. So you can see here, like, the lights have gone down in the hole. Once the coins explode, like, all of those LED lights have gone out, so it becomes very sort of dark in here. So, and here's the appearance of Negascott.
I love Negascott.
So this is like, obviously Michael is playing against himself, and actually for these shots he had some makeup on. He had makeup to accentuate his cheekbones. So
Kabuki Scott.
Kabuki Scott, absolutely. He looks terrifying. It kind of like reminds me of like the pirates in The Fog, John Carpenter's The Fog.
It's so essential though for the following cut. He has to be terrifying so that this is funny.
Yeah. Now this is another bit where we shot kind of extra material on this, and this was
that facade, by the way, is just a facade sitting out in the middle of the street.
Oh yeah,
that Marcus did.
This nightclub basically does not exist behind. Don't go and look for it. It is not there. But this is down, I think in Toronto this is a junction. I know it well because we scouted it so many times.
Front and Cherry?
Front and Cherry. I'll never forget Front and Cherry. But this was, this is right kind of near sort of downtown Toronto, and you can see the lights. The reason that we picked this street is because in the reverse shot, which you should see right there, you can kind of see, you know, right down into sort of downtown Toronto. And actually, weirdly, given the simplification of, you know, the way we sort of tried to make Brian's art come to life, this is the only time in the whole film, apart from the outside of the night circle, you don't really see traffic in the background or the sense of life. And we thought in this sequence, I remember you asking me on the night saying, oh, do we want to frame out those cars? And I thought, oh, it's kind of nice that in the last scene of the film, there's a sense of like the real world in the background.
Mm-hmm. A little twinkle.
Yeah.
This scene works really well. And it all leads up to that final shot.
It's nice as well having the little, I mean, given how stylized the rest of it is, it's nice having the little pinpoints of light, you know, and because we're on super long lenses here, you just get these little blobs of color in the background. It looks really sweet.
Simple moves like this Edgar does over and over in the movie. When you go back and watch the movie, the camera's almost never sitting still.
But what about you?
It's part of never going back to the same shot. If you're dollying around, you're more likely to be able to cut back to a different shot at a different point in the dolly. And it also increases the intensity of a shot throughout the course of it.
Well, I think it's also kind of just rhythm-wise, it's kind of a way of always being in control of the script, because especially in a comedy, there's a tendency to kind of riff endlessly and scenes can go way, way longer than they should, but if there's a camera move that's designed to land with a particular line, it's actually a way of kind of having a beginning, middle, and end to the scene. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You kind of editing it in camera in some respects.
It's music. We jumped the line on that one to line up those shots so that they looked exactly like the first time they held hands and went through a door in the park. If you remember, those are exactly the same shots, the same lenses.
I feel like the more I direct, the less I understand about the line. I feel like I knew more about the line when I was 20 than I do now. I feel like I'm regressing. I'm going to turn into Tony Scott and not even care about the line anymore.
That's the final lesson. Is the line is malleable.
If it bends, it's funny. If it breaks, it's not funny.
The line bender.
And I am the last line bender. You can bend the line, but never break the line. That would be a bad idea. But you can certainly bend it, just never break it. If people, that'd be a terrible thing to go into kind of like film school and say, kids, if I can give you one lesson in filmmaking, it's bend the line, but never break the line. You can cross the line, and you can bend it, but never break it. Oh my God, the film just ended. What happened?
Lucy.
I was so busy wittering.
Michael.
It's my brother.
Oscar.
I hope it's clear, not just from the film, but from the amount of names on this roller, how hard everybody works on this film. Oh my god.
Leo. I could yell out all these names. It was a really close crew, everybody. It's fun to be there.
I know.
Hats off to Toronto.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for having us.
A warm hats off to Toronto. Furry hats.
Warm furry.
Warm furry hats off to Toronto. Yeah, the great thing was, I mean, one thing we didn't talk about, but we've got a little bit more rollers to talk about. The amazing thing about this film is because Brian Lee O'Malley lived in and set the books in Toronto, we had the most amazing gift of having the source material being based in real locations. You know, most films don't have the benefit of being able to shoot in the real places, and it made such an enormous difference to shooting in the real locations from the book. Or even, I think, for the crew, I feel that there was probably more of a sense of civic pride because we were shooting Toronto for Toronto. Yeah,
I mean, I think everybody understood the worth of being there, and including the Torontonians, and everybody connected with it. Even though Universal did ask us to shoot it in New York and fake it for Toronto.
At one point, there was the amazing irony of potentially shooting in New York and making it double for Toronto, which would have been insanity. But
even though Universal was incredibly supportive throughout the whole thing, but they had to fulfill their duties and asked us to shoot it in New York. That's funny.
No matter how many nice things you say about Universal, they are not going to give you any money for that Sucks Infinity joke. Don't even try it. Look at, like, sort of like...
I'm trying, I'm flagging it.
Well, you can see just how, like, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, obviously they worked very hard on the film. I know, you can see from these credits just, like, what an enormous amount of work went into this. Not least from the Toronto Library. You're very green, Bill. You encouraged the water bottles thing.
Yes, thank you.
Anyway, I guess that's time for us to stop yabbering and stuff.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you liked it as much as we do.
Yeah, we very much enjoyed working on it. I love this man sitting next to me so much that we're now going to make out. Good night.
Ridiculous.